Chapter 76 Concentrating on Soul Spell. In the Tier 6 meditation chamber, Maximus stood up to try and cast an original spell without a manual. After all, what he had studied was equivalent to the very nature of a Tier 0 spell, not the spell itself, so creating a new spell should be easy. Starting with a simple fire element spell, he tried to imagine a fire dragon-shaped spell. With some initial mastery of Tier 0 fire spells, he succeeded after a few seconds. However, instead of a majestic fire dragon, a misshapen, bloated fire snake emerged from his spell, deviating from his intended image. What the? Maximus's face darkened at the sight of the distorted fire dragon he had imagined. Maximus sat down glumly, contemplating what had gone wrong. Then it hit him, his mastery in all types of spells is only initial, so of course his mastery in creating original fire-type spells is also initial mastery, which is not enough. Although he can cast the fire spell he learned previously without any deviation, the spell he created with only initial mastery is a failure. Maximus just cited it was great and all to master all types of spells. Unfortunately, it consumed too much time. With his daily acquisition of LP, studying all of it simultaneously was a pipe dream. He realized that he was too reckless and greedy. After all, who in their right mind would spend 500 years just to master all types of Tier 0 spells? Just finding a complete inheritance of all types of Tier 0 spells is close to impossible. And even then, the lethality of such a low-tier spell was almost close to zero. Will you practice creating spells from scratch just for the sake of cool party tricks? So, of course, most of the mages just study one or two for their safety and meditate to further their strength. When they're strong enough and have enough lifespan, that is when they started to seriously create their spell. Maximus suppressed the uncomfortable feeling in his heart. He had thought he could study it all, but his low LP acquisition forced him to focus on individual types of spells. Maximus returned from meditation, hoping to calm his wounded heart and consider which type of spell he should concentrate on first. The next day, Maximus opened his eyes, feeling refreshed. The life and potential point is refreshed. LP, 9300. PP, 115,112. After a day of meditating and pondering which types of spells he should concentrate on, he decided to focus on 10 types of spells, the 5 elements fire, water, wood, earth, and metal, the 3 supreme elements space, time, and fate, and finally, spells for the soul and the body. His affinity towards these spells is only rank 0 trash, considering his previous talent. After all, his meditation method only improved his comprehension, not affinity. For the first type of spell, he started on soul-type spells since his main profession was a mage. Furthermore, after he mastered the art of the soul, maybe it could enhance his training speed as he is at the nascent stage, which is the stage to temper the soul. Looking at the panel, he first upgraded his soul affinity to rank 4 legendary. Soul affinity, rank 0 trash 0/50. 15,550 pp. Soul affinity, rank 4 legendary 0/500 000. Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, Initial, 15, 253/320 000. Then, he tried adding 1 LP to see how many points he would gain per day. Plus 1 LP equals 900. It seemed that improving his soul affinity had an effect. Based on this rate, it would only take him a year to fully master the Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, which was a significant difference compared to the 500 years it would take to master all types of spells. This reminded him once again of his previous hastiness. Despite nearly 100 years of comprehension, he could only cast a worm-like fire dragon. He upgraded the initial mastery to proficient mastery. Plus 339 LP equals 305,100. Almost a year of comprehension was quickly absorbed by Maximus, compared to the 100 years of comprehension before, a mere year felt like a child's play. Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, Proficient, 353/640 000. With proficient mastery, he attempted to create a soul spell and casted it. After a few seconds, it manifested just as he had imagined. It was a soul-like puppet that could provide him with information about what it sensed. He tried to control it, and it effortlessly passed through the wall as if the array in place meant nothing. This shocked him. It seemed that he would need to add formations specialized in soul restriction in the future. The soul was indeed strange, capable of traversing any obstacle as if it were nothing. As the soul puppet floated forward, it reached its limit when it was about 10 meters away. This was the limit of a normal Tier 0 soul spell, so it's not surprising. He dispelled the spell and continued adding points. Plus 711 LP equals 639,000. Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, Expert 253/960,000. This time, his mastery reached expert level and he tried casting the same spell as before. With a single cast, multiple soul puppets were conjured instantly. Earlier, it took a few seconds to manifest the spell and he couldn't cast the spell multiple times simultaneously. But now, he could do it effortlessly, as if it were nothing. He then tested the distance limit of the soul puppets, but it remained within the limits of a Tier 0 spell. So he continued to add points. Plus 1,067 equals 960,300. Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, Perfect, 553/1,280,000. This time it took nearly 3 years of comprehension. He tried the same spell once again to observe the changes in the soul puppets. This time, controlling them felt as natural as moving his arms. After casting the spell, he could still modify it even after he cast the spell, much like molding a finished pottery piece. He experimented with the casted soul puppets that he summoned from that of a cat, dog, book, or chair, and all of these changes happened in an instant. He tried various postures, making the puppets bigger or smaller, and after a few minutes of playful experimentation, he had seen enough. During these few minutes, his consumption was only about 10% of what it had been earlier. Meaning he can cast the spell 10 times that of normal. As for the distance limit, it remained at 10 meters. With a flick of his hand, he added more points. Plus 1 for 22 LP equals 1,279,800. Tier 0 Soul Spell Volume, Transcendent, Max. This time, it took nearly 4 years of comprehension and now it had reached its maximum level. Unless he used potential points or acquired further knowledge, it could not be upgraded any further. With a wave of his hand, the meditation room was suddenly flooded with soul puppets. This gave him a shock. After all, soul puppet is somewhat translucent, and having a bunch of them squeezing in a tight room is eerie. Maximus quickly dispersed the soul puppets. He heaved a sigh and contemplated what had just happened. Even though he had tried to use less than 1% of the normal mana consumption for the spell, the soul puppets he conjured still flooded his room. After a few minutes of testing, he confirmed what was happening. If perfect mastery only cost 10% of the normal consumption, then transcendent mastery would only cost 0.1%. This meant that he could cast a transcendent mastery spell 1,000 times compared to normal. Furthermore, the distance limit surpassed the Tier 0 spell's restrictions. 10 meters became 1,000 meters, which was slightly longer than a Tier 1 spell. But that wasn't even the main benefit of transcendent mastery. His transcendent soul mastery had a tremendous effect on his mage training. He tried it just now, with his control tempering his soul was twice as fast as before, meaning 10 times faster than when he only had Tier 4 legendary talent. Moreover, this is just Tier 0 soul spell mastery. He pondered whether he should concentrate on buying Tier 1 soul spell knowledge or improve his mastery of other spells. Maximus first checked his points. LP, 5,760. PP, 59,612. After some deliberation, he decided to focus on soul spells first. After all, there is a saying that it's better to be excellent at one thing than to be mediocre at everything. Maximus then browsed through the Hexen library for a complete Tier 1 soul spell volume. His consciousness materialized in his system inventory, where he saw a small pile of books about Tier 1 soul spells. The Tier 1 soul spell volume was stacked together. With just a sweep of his consciousness, all the information was stored in his mind. Tier 1 soul spell volume, initial 1/960,000. Without further hesitation, he allocated all his LP to it. Plus 5,760 LP equals 5,184,000. Tier 1 Soul Spell Volume, Expert 2-304-000/2-880,000. Despite more than 15 years of comprehension, he only reached Expert Mastery, which was somewhat disappointing. However, he knew that with just a few more days, he would master it until it reached the Transcendent level. After adding points and feeling the thrill of rapid mastery, Maximus patted his clothes and walked out of the meditation chamber. As for meditation training? Who cares? It's not as useful as adding points, so why bother? He would wait until he upgraded his talent a little more so that training would become more enjoyable. After all, he was not a native in this world, and he didn't have the patience to sit quietly and slowly absorb mana to temper his soul. If it were you, even if you knew you would eventually learn something after spending a long time on it, would you still learn it? Sure, if forced by circumstances and with no other choice, you might push yourself to the limit without much complaint. But for him who had a cheat, his mentality now was that if he couldn't master something immediately, why bother? Besides, there wasn't much of a threat to him at the moment. Of course, that didn't mean he would be lazy. His plan now was to increase the daily generation of life and potential points, starting by personally training his wives and children. As for finding more wives or having more children, additional wives would not be of much help, as the life points added were based on strength and talent. He suddenly thought of Isabella, who possessed both strength and talent. As for having more children, he was working hard for it, spreading his seeds whenever he had the time. Chapter 77: Teaching Wives to Upgrade. After coming out of the meditation room, Maximus headed to the garden, where his wives and children were staying at the moment, according to the array monitoring. He saw his wives relaxing, either reading a book, sewing something, eating, cooking, or simply playing with the children. Daddy. Dat. Good morning, father. When the children saw their father, they happily greeted him and came back to playing. His wives looked at him carefully and felt that something was different with their husband. It seemed like he was more handsome and had a knowledgeable aura, and his previous arrogance was also concealed. What happened to you, dear? Erica asked as he sat next to them. Nothing, I just finished training, Maximus said. Oh, what are you doing here then? She asked. They had been quite upset with Maximus recently, as they had hardly seen him in the past 3 days. If they didn't know he was safe, they would have gone crazy with worry. I missed you, Maximus said sweetly and came to hug them. He had indeed been busy these past few days. After the system was updated, he was either testing the changes or doing something else. Until this day, he had only roughly browsed what was on the system's intermittent recordings. After all, who knows how long the system exists, he just watched it roughly, skipping the parts where there is not much information. Fortunately, he can pinpoint the information he wanted if he concentrates, so he can roughly know what changed in the system. Humph, Erica just harumphed. Well, how about I stay with you today? Maximus chuckled and said to his wives and the kids who were busy playing. Yay! Most of his children were excited. Playing with their father was always fun. All right, let's start. Maximus played with the children the whole day while bonding with his wives. After a whole day of bonding and playing, Maximus slept with his wives for the great mission of spreading his seeds to have more children. Unfortunately, it wasn't as easy as before, as they were already tier 2, which made giving birth a bit difficult. So he still needed to work harder. The next day at the breakfast table. I will help you train today, so get ready, Maximus looked at his wives and said. What? They were puzzled. They were already adults, so what was there to help? Oh, it's just a bit of guidance. I had an epiphany the other day, and I think it will help with the training. Furthermore, we will go to the Arcane Continent in less than 2 months. Although it's safe there as long as you are in a city, it's still better to have some strength, Maximus said in excuse. After all, could he say that he needed more LP so they needed to be stronger? As for the Arcane Continent being safe? It is indeed safe as long as you're inside the city. The protection array set there will ensure you are not harmed. Here in the Sunburnt Plateau, however, the castle only has a maximum tier 6 protection. In the cities of the Arcane Continent, only a tier 9 being can cause any harm to people inside the city. So unless you're so poor that you have to live in the wilderness, it's very safe. As for how it is guaranteed, Maximus didn't know, but it was quite common knowledge among the people living there. After his wives reluctantly agreed, they came to the meditation room that he had just built. With a tier 6 mana concentration in the room, along with his guidance and various resources, he thought that it would only take a little over a month for them to upgrade to tier 3 nascent mages. This was much faster than him. After all, when he first trained, he only had resources worth thousands of GP. Now, he would use resources worth millions of GP just to train them to tier 3. If it were not for the consequence of a poor foundation, he could let them upgrade in just a week with resources. To ensure they had a solid foundation, even if they use a large amount of resources. Maximus used more than 9,000 LP he had obtained for the day to quickly master the basic knowledge for mage and knight cultivation. He also upgraded his Mentor Insight by the way. Mentor Insight, rank 5 Mythic 0/3/000,000. Basic knowledge for tier 0 to 3 mage and knight cultivation, Transcendent, max. Tier 0-3 Elemental Breath, Transcendent, max. Tier 0-3 Moonlight Serenade, Transcendent, max. Fortunately, there were only a few books, so he quickly maxed them out. He also mastered their cultivation manual to teach them better. Since their cultivation manual was only of high quality compared to his own, which was top quality, he only needed a few hundred LP to upgrade them to transcendent. "Should we start?" one of his wives asked, unsure of what to do. "Yes, just meditate like normal, and I will see what I can do." Maximus nodded and had them start meditating. He didn't know if the upgraded mentor insight and cultivation knowledge would be useful. Among them, only Erica and Hazel were great mages, while the rest were official mages. As his wives started, the mana in the room surged toward them. As he looked at them, using his high mentor insight and basic knowledge, Maximus could easily identify the more efficient mana routes based on their physique perfectly. Good, stop for now. Maximus was satisfied with his test. He then took out Tier 1 and 2 rapid elixir potions. These potions could quickly gather mana from the surroundings and converge it to the user. Although they looked simple, they were pretty expensive, costing a few million GP each. Apparently, each drop of the potion was filled with complex arrays, which were unconventional, and just thinking about it you will know that it's not cheap. "Take this and start again." "You start, Erica," he said. All right, Erica obediently followed her husband's instructions. His other wives stood on the side, looking puzzled, unsure of what their husband was going to do. As Erica took the potion, a rapid movement of mana coursed through her. Erica panicked a little as the mana moved too fast for her to control. One wrong move and it could be disastrous. Not knowing what to do, she trusted her husband and attempted to control the rapid mana. "Circulate the mana along the pathways I constructed," Maximus silently advised. With Transcendent Mastery, he created a Tier 0 soul spell that formed soul pathways, softening and guiding the passage of mana flowing through his wife. Controlling the surging mana was like taming a raging river. With Maximus' mentor's insight and follow-up knowledge, he could determine the gentlest lands and the most efficient ways for the mana to flow. Following her husband's guidance, Erica quickly directed the surging mana into the soul pathways. To her surprise, although the mana surged violently and seemed uncontrollable, with her husband's guidance, she felt like she was gracefully dancing with the waves. After a few minutes, the surging mana subsided within Erica.
Huh.
Erica breathed a sigh of relief as if she had survived a calamity. That was too dangerous. Erica looked at her husband angrily.
"It's all right.
You see, you're safe and sound." Maximus smiled with relief. Although he was confident he could save his wife even if something went wrong, he didn't want to see them get hurt. Fortunately, the mentor insight and the transcendent Tier 0 soul spell worked wonders. He had only thought that his soul spell could serve as a guide, but he didn't expect it to soften the mana and make it easier to absorb.
"How do you feel? How is your strength?"
Maximus asked, curious to see the extent of the rapid elixir potion's impact. "I don't know, but I feel 3 times stronger." Erica was also shocked by her improvement.
"Oh?"
Maximus was curious and scanned his wife, Erica, with his system. Erica, Fit 97. Soul, Great Mage Level 3. Body, Official Knight Level 2. Mana Compatibility, Rank 3 Rare. Gastronomic Aptitude, Rank 6 Divine.
"What?"
Maximus said inwardly. He was not shocked by the improvement of his wife from Great Mage Level 1 to Level 3. What shocked him was the additional discovery that his wife had a Tier 6 divine potential for gastronomy. It was his first time scanning them since the system updated. He had thought that only his panel changed, but now he could see their specific potential in all fields. Besides the gastronomic aptitude, which stood out like a sore thumb, all of her potential in other fields was either trash or common. After browsing through his system's intermittent recordings, he came to know that this was also one of the criteria for the fit value to break through 89 and reach 90. Even if they were goddesses, without a field in which their potential reached at least rank 6 divine, no matter what he did, they would not meet the system's required fit value. Apparently, without a high attunement to the world, the system couldn't utilize the so-called family bond to absorb this world's excess time energy. So their natural beauty, character, and, most importantly, potential were the main criteria of the system. As for why only mana compatibility and tier of strength are included in the daily generation of LP and not this type of talent, it was because this talent was untapped and was only used as a display. If the system was a leverage that absorbs life points, then the tier of strength would indicate how strong the leverage is in absorbing time energy. Mana compatibility would be the environment where it absorbs time energy. Higher mana compatibility means more quantity of time energy to absorb. And this aptitude, which had nothing to do with mana, is the technique on how the leverage absorbs the time energy. So without corresponding knowledge to utilize this aptitude, it was useless, and thus it's not included in the generation of LP. Chapter 78, Teaching Wives to Upgrade 2. After Maximus looked at the status panel of his wife, he calmed down. Having a Tier 6 divine potential is very good. This will make it more convenient in the future. Originally, he planned to take his wives to the arcane continent, and after he upgraded their talent to at least the mythic rank, they can also enter one of the academies in the origin domain. You need to at least have a mythic rank talent or comprehension to take the academy test in the origin domain. As for other forces in other domains, they don't have strict requirements, but he didn't bother with them as they are bound to private forces. Unlike the academies in the origin domain, you are not bound to anything unless you voluntarily join in. But now, knowing that they had at least rank 6 divine talent, he was sure that they could pass any test. This got him thinking about Griffin, who was with him on the ship going to the arcane continent. He only had a rare talent, not even legendary. Perhaps he had talent in other areas that he didn't know about. After all, the system can only scan mana compatibility before. Next. After Erica, all of his wives took a rapid elixir potion, and he then guided them to successfully refine their souls.
How is it?
I told you I have a way to make you stronger in a short time, Maximus somewhat bragged. All of them had varying increases in strength. His wives, who had official mage strength, increased their strength by about 5 levels, which is truly an insane speed.
Does this have side effects?
Hazel asked worriedly. No, but you need to consolidate your strength, otherwise you won't be able to properly control the surging mana next time, Maximus smiled and comforted. That's why they needed a week of interval before taking the potion again. Otherwise, they could really advance to Tier 3 mage in just a week.
There's more?
They were shocked. They thought such a potion had limited effects. Of course, you can take it once a week.
Where did you get such a precious potion?
They asked, puzzled. This is a secret potion created by my teacher. Maximus lied and dumped it to his fake teacher again. All the items they used were dumped onto this convenient fake teacher, except for the drop of origin mana. This form of mana is only found at the beginning of the conception of the world, so it has a miraculous effect on improving mana compatibility. He also saw it on the catalog list in the EGCC, but he needed at least VIP 3 status to be eligible to buy it. So, he didn't even tell them about the drop of origin mana as he mixed it with their food and drink without their knowledge. Alright, next is night cultivation. Maximus clapped his hands, getting their attention. Mages target the soul and knights target the body, so there is no conflict. Although at their current state, they can't properly control their mana, so he needed to personally guide the mana. The soul is sensitive, so he can't do it for them unless he fully masters the soul spell to transcendent that is at least 1 tier higher than their strength.
What do we do?
They asked. Take off your clothes and I will do everything, Maximus smirked. Although clothes don't interfere much, their clothes are magic items, so they needed to take them off. It's not like he's a pervert, or is he?
What?
They blushed but obediently took off their clothes. You don't need to take your clothes off, Irene. You're still pregnant, and it's bad for the baby if something happens, Maximus said to Irene, who was preparing to take her clothes off despite her bulging stomach.
Is that so?
All right, then, Irene readily agreed, realizing that it would indeed endanger her unborn child when doing vigorous physical activity.
Here, just drink this.
Maximus took out a vial of origin essence. Different from the origin mana, origin essence is 100 times more expensive. This one vial of origin essence alone cost him 10 billion GP. It is especially good for when a creature is being conceived. Like origin mana, it is found mainly in the world that is at the beginning of its conception, and origin essence was responsible for conceiving the primordial life in it. He hoped that with this potion, his unborn child would reach at least mythical talent, which is at least 100,000 potential points. And if it somehow reaches divine rank, that's 1,000,000 potential points.
What is this?
Irene asked as she took what was in the vial, trusting her husband very much. It's for your baby, Maximus said as he hugged her and gently caressed her stomach. Excuse me, we're also here, his naked wives said impatiently. They were already naked, yet their husband still clung to the one he couldn't use. Oh, coming right away. Maximus looked at his naked wives, and his beastly nature almost took over. But thinking he still had important things to do, he suppressed his desire. Looking at their husband and seeing him look at them like a beast, they just rolled their eyes. It was still broad daylight, for God's sake. Let's start again with Erica. Maximus took out the Vigor Infusion Elixir Potion. This potion was a little more expensive than the Rapid Elixir Potion, as it can gather mana coupled with vast vitality to temper and strengthen the body. Night training basically involves destroying the body with mana to make it stronger and more adaptable to it. Erica took the potion, but before she drank it, she was stopped by Maximus. Wait, Maximus remembered that according to the description, it was 100 times more painful compared to normal night tempering. He didn't want to see his wife suffer just for a mere life point, so he thought of a solution. What about creating a soul spell that separates the sensation of the body for a while? Maximus tried that idea and quickly cast the Tier 0 spell.
How do you feel?
Maximus asked as he pinched her arm. It didn't hurt? Erica looked at him in puzzlement. Maximus furrowed his brow. Since his wife could still feel it, then when the rapid tempering of the body starts, it will still hurt like hell. He then cast a Tier 1 soul spell. Although he didn't have much control over it like the Tier 0 Transcendent Mastery soul spell, it was still stronger.
How about now?
Huh? I don't feel anything. Erica could still move her body perfectly, but she couldn't feel anything strangely. She felt as if she was only controlling a puppet body. Thadim, if it weren't for her trust in her husband, she would be freaking out right now. Great, now take the potion. As she took the potion, a huge surge of mana invaded her body, rapidly disintegrating it. However, there was also a strange vitality that repaired this disintegration. At that moment, she thought about the consequences if she could still feel her body. Just thinking about it made her face pale. Are you all right? Maximus, looking at his wife's pale face, asked worriedly.
No, I'm fine.
You don't need to worry, Erica just smiled, as she didn't feel anything at all. It was just weird to see her body being destroyed and repaired rapidly in a short span of time. Maximus sighed and began guiding the rapid mana that was destroying her body recklessly. With the use of his mentor's insight and knowledge, he knew the appropriate amount of mana that was just right and could be quickly healed by the surging vitality. Otherwise, some areas of her body might be destroyed before they could be healed. With skillful control, Maximus further accelerated the surging mana, making his wife's body almost transparent. This made the people watching from behind pale. But seeing their husband's skillful and handsome control, they sighed in relief. With the acceleration of mana, it took less than a minute for the potion to be fully consumed.
Huh?
Maximus looked at Erica's entire body, checking for any omissions. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, he dispelled the soul spell. Erica touched her body, feeling that she was intact and the feeling of sensation is back. Just as she was preparing to lunge at him, she was jerked into the air when she tried to forcefully stand up. Looking at Erica jerked up into the air due to her little tantrum and lack of control due to the rapid increase in physical strength, Maximus chuckled. With quick reaction, he elegantly caught the naked Erica as she fell. Are you all right? Maximus said with a smirk.
It's you. It's your fault.
Erica was embarrassed by her clumsiness and softly punched him in the chest. Yes, it's because of me, Maximus said, pinching her soft body.
You.
Erica was immediately jolted in embarrassment.
Put me down.
All right, Maximus gently put her down. Looking at her body, which was still flawless as always, one would not think that she had already given birth to 3 children. But seeing her looking at him with a cute angry face, and his other wives who were also looking at him naked waiting for their turn. Ahem, who's next? Maximus said with a fake cough. Chapter 79 Spirit Plant Harvest. A week later, in the court of the castle. Good morning, gentlemen. Let us begin without further ado. Maximus motioned to his minister to start reporting what happened this month. Your Majesty, there are currently more than 5 million acres of land rented. After a month, the harvest is about 50 million tons of spiritual plants. Impressive, Maximus couldn't help but nod. But, Your Majesty, the problem is that after we took 70% of their produce, no one is willing to buy the rest as others also have their own produce, Dolan said helplessly. This is indeed a problem because there is no external market for them to sell to. Maximus acknowledged. The problem is that the spiritual plant they planted is only useful for mortals. Although it's a Tier 1 spiritual plant, its only function is to grow quickly and provide more nutrition to mortals. So, hoping to sell it to other territories in the cursed continent is not feasible. Just buy it all, then slowly sell it to them, Maximus decided quickly. The only reason he released this type of spiritual plant instead of plants that could help with cultivation is: first, it doesn't require much care. With the learning pace of his people, who don't even know how to read, this type of spiritual plant is easy to take care of, only needing a few drizzles of Tier 0 spirit rain. Second, he hoped to quickly make them rich. Most people only have a few copper coins, as the 10 gold credits loaned to them are either used to rent land or buy cultivation manuals. But, Your Majesty, buying so much will only spoil the harvested crop if we don't sell it quickly, Dolan reasoned. I already have a solution for this. Do you remember when I asked you to expand the granary? Maximus asked. Dolan thought about it and nodded. Indeed, he was tasked with expanding the underground granary. Thanks to the hard work of a bunch of newly promoted apprentice mages and knights, the granary expanded at least 1,000 times in a month. Putting 50 million tons of harvested crops in it was a piece of cake. But even so, it will only extend the life of the harvested crops for a few months. Dolan persuaded Maximus not to continue with the plan. No, don't worry. My teacher taught me how to set up an array to perfectly preserve food, just like the array formation in the kingdom, Maximus said seriously. Then, Your Majesty, after our 70% share, there are about 15 million tons that we need to buy. According to your quotation, this Tier 1 spiritual plant should at least cost 5 silver coins per kilogram, making the total to 750 million gold coins, which we don't have, Dolan said, hoping to dissuade His Majesty or at least lower the price. 5 silver coins were already an exorbitant price, even though it's a spiritual plant. After all, they provided the land and seeds, so it would be acceptable to arbitrarily lower the price. Don't worry about that. Don't we have Moonlight Bank? There is no need for physical money, Maximus said. Thinking that his people would add 750 million gold credits, plus the previous gold credits, it would almost catch up to 1 billion gold points per month when converted to the system. However, doing that will crash the market. Without products for them to spend on, it will lead to chaos, Dolan said. Although he had no concept of inflation, being an old minister, he still had a basic understanding of the market. I know, I will add advanced knowledge to the Moonlight Library about various professions and sell the following resources, Maximus stated. After all, we can't have our people only being farmers or construction workers, Maximus contemplated. That's a great idea, Your Majesty, but people are ignorant and don't have much knowledge. How can they comprehend difficult knowledge about various professions? Dolan asked, puzzled. It was indeed a good idea. With people learning professions like potion-making alchemy, they can have their own value. Otherwise, Maximus' territory would only be like a factory, with Maximus as the owner and his people as workers. With people only knowing how to plant and mindlessly follow blueprints in construction, sooner or later Maximus' territory will collapse. Isn't there an academy? Once it's built, they can just learn it there with proper guidance. Just don't place any restrictions for now. Anyone is welcome to attend, Maximus suggested. Furthermore, to prevent any talented individuals from delaying their studies, divide them into levels, Maximus concluded. Dolan quickly wrote down Maximus' instructions, not daring to miss anything. After that, they discussed the follow-up plan in more detail to minimize the impact that it will cause. Next, how about you, Landon? How is the relocation going? Maximus asked. Your Majesty, since we started the relocation 3 months ago, we have relocated more than 13 million people, Landon reported. At this rate, it will take a few years just to relocate people here, Maximus thought. I will add another 900 ships in addition to the 100 ships earlier. That's good, Your Majesty, Landon said in relief. Transporting people from one place to another is not as easy as it seems. It takes at least a week of back and forth. So it's no wonder that he can only transport more than 4 million people a month. How about you, Robert? How is the task of breeding magic beasts going? Maximus inquired. It's going well, Your Majesty. Without the corrosive mana, we have chosen easy-to-tame beasts and are preparing to breed them on a large scale, Robert excitedly said. In the past, the only source of meat was through hunting, but now they can harvest meat as if it were from plants. It was too far-fetched that he didn't even dare to imagine it in the past. Good, continue what you are doing, Maximus approved. Then they discussed more specific aspects of breeding magic beasts, such as selecting those that produce more meat for consumption and choosing flying beasts or fast-type beasts for transportation. What about you, Tristan? How are the merchants doing? Maximus looked at Tristan and asked. Well, the merchants are struggling a bit. With the monopoly of the Earthria Pavilion, they don't know what to sell, Tristan truthfully reported. Humph, that's the consequence of only knowing how to hoard food, Maximus grumbled. These merchants only know how to hoard food and sell it at expensive prices due to their monopoly on resources. However, Your Majesty, craftsmen, tailors, blacksmiths, and others are becoming rich, Tristan said. Indeed, Maximus couldn't help but nod, and he pondered. Although people don't have much money, without worries about danger and food, they are still willing to spend for their comfort. Merchants need to learn from these people. They need skills to survive in this current market, Maximus advised. Indeed, Your Majesty, they were already trying to survey the market, looking for what to do, Tristan confirmed. There is one individual, in particular, who has a brilliant mind and has decided to form an escort guard, recruiting the scattered knights that came from the previous kingdoms.
What do they escort?
Maximus inquired. They guard the newly promoted apprentice knights, allowing them to gain experience in Tier 1 forests, Tristan explained. That is indeed a good idea, Maximus acknowledged. After that, Tristan told what kind of businesses are still running and blooming at the tranny of Etheria Pavilion. Although Etheria Pavilion only sold raw materials and food. However, this still put a lot of pressure on the other merchant. Maximus can't just take out the Etheria Pavilion as it's the driving force of his current territory situation. His kingdom is just begging to form, and without his help or the Etheria Pavilion to set an example, it is easy to go awry with the current market situation. But still, he needed to think of another source for his people to earn money. He then thought of building a virtual coliseum. With it, his people can earn and train their combat capability at the same time. If his system didn't update and produce life points which he can use to quickly master skills, then he wouldn't even think about it. After all, the difficulty of inscribing a rune program about virtual worlds is very hard and time-consuming, but with life point maybe he can think of a solution for this. After the meeting, he came to the meditation room and assist his wives in cultivation like what they did last week. This time they already knew what to expect, so they were not scared but excited instead. After all, who wouldn't want a quick boost of strength without drawbacks? After the session, all of his wives became great mages and great knights. Making the total life point he gained every day came from 9300 LP to 11,400 LP.
How is study this week?
Maximus asked. After knowing that they possessed divine talent in a certain profession, he urged them to study in this area, which they didn't have much resistance. They were even excited as they were bored and had nothing to do. It is very easy and fun. Later let Sister Erica cook for you, the taste of her food hiss. Hazel the foodie said, imagining the food that Erica cooked when she tried a food recipe. They were truly mouth-watering. It is different from the usual, as if eating every bit is an explosion of flavor. Alright, let's try that later. Maximus just smiled at them. Chapter 80: Build an AI Split Personality. In the castle dining chamber, Maximus and his family were having a feast. Tasting Erica's cooking, he had to say divine talent is indeed on another level. It was incomparable to the food cooked by the spirit chef when he was on the ship heading towards the arcane continent. There were also the twins Luna and Livia, who had divine talent when it came to music. Eating while listening to music was a heavenly experience. His children also enjoyed the show and asked if they could learn it too. Unfortunately, when he scanned their status in the system, their highest talent in other professions is only ranked 3 rare. Fortunately, there are many items in the Myriad World Mall that can enhance talent in a certain field, so it's not a problem. Everything that can be solved with money is not a problem. If it can't be solved with money, then you don't have enough of it. After the feast, he flew towards the underground granary. Looking at the massive granary in front of him, he started setting up the array. First, he bought Preservation Array from the system. Formation Array Aptitude, Uncommon, 0/500. Preservation Array, Tier 3 Initial, 1/3000.
Chinze sute pepe.
Plus 90 LP equals 45,000. Formation Array Aptitude, Mythic, 0/500000. Preservation Array, Tier 3 Transcendent, Max. It is indeed easy to master specific knowledge, Maximus murmured. He thought of mastering a couple of Tier 3 spells so he could have a quick boost in strength. With his transcendent mastery of Preservation Array, setting it up was a piece of cake. After he bought the array of materials, with his powerful spiritual consciousness, he manipulated the materials simultaneously and quickly finished setting up the array in just a few hours. The next day he summoned Doran to his office. I have finished setting up the preservation array in the granary. You can start transporting the food there, Maximus began. All right, Your Majesty. I'll do it right away, Doran respectfully said. After that, they discussed the specifics of the task, including the process of buying the harvested crops and how to sell them. After talking to Doran, he headed to the hidden underground chamber of the castle. After a night of thinking, he came up with a solution to create a virtual world without it being time-consuming and difficult. The problem with creating a rune program for a virtual world is that inscribing runes is time-consuming. Just like when he inscribed the Moonlight Forum previously, it took him 2 weeks just for a simple function. He thought of making a device to inscribe an array for himself. This is not sold in the Myriad System Mall, as inscribing a rune program requires a soul as a driving force and a brand. Meaning whoever made the rune program had the highest authority over it. So, at most, the Myriad System Mall sold a rune program manual, not the actual product. Alternatively, he could buy a sentient slave to inscribe the rune program. With him being the master, it would be equivalent to having the highest authority over it. Unfortunately, buying slaves from the Myriad World Mall risks having the coordinates of Ethereum realm exposed. His solution was to create artificial intelligence and split a part of his soul to act as a guide and the brand of the rune program, bearing his soul signature. He first browsed the Myriad World Mall of the interstellar-type dimension and looked for knowledge about creating artificial intelligence. Then he bought the entire Eldrin runic language. Next, he searched for knowledge about combining runes and souls. Mechanics Comprehension, Mythic 0/1000000. Runic Comprehension, Uncommon 0/200. Creating Artificial Intelligence, Initial 1/100,000. Combining Runes and Souls, Initial 10,000. Eldrin Runic Language, Initial 1,000,000. After he bought all the necessary items, it was time to allocate points. Fortunately, he stopped adding points these days, hoping to use them when necessary. So he had enough life and potential points when needed. PP 224,948. LP 78,330. He first upgraded the Runic Comprehension then the rest. Rune Comprehension 22,200 PP. Artificial Intelligence Plus 3,000 LP equals 1,500,000, 1 LP equals 500. Rune and Souls. Plus 150 LP equals 150,000, asterisk 1 LP equals 1,000. Eldrin. Plus 15,000 LP equals 15 million, asterisk 1 LP equals 1,000. After he finished adding points, he looked at his system. Mechanics Comprehension, Mythic 0/1000000. Runic Comprehension, Mythic 0/2000000. Creating Artificial Intelligence, Transcendent Max. Combining Runes and Souls, Transcendent Max. Eldrin Runic Language, Transcendent Max. Armed with Transcendent Mastery, he started creating an AI runic program for himself. I think you should take a look at. Waving his hand, he began inscribing the AI runic program, translating the interstellar programming language to Eldrin language. Without resting, 3 days later, he completed the body of the AI runic program. Looking at the exquisite program that he had created himself, Maximus couldn't help but marvel at how powerful Transcendent Mastery is. He went beyond what was written in the book and added his personal insights and requirements, making the AI runic program highly malleable. He thought that in the future when he had more knowledge, he could upgrade this AI runic program to become truly sentient, not just driven by his soul. Now, the only missing thing was a part of his soul. First, he bought a Tier 3 Soul Splitting Spell. Soul Splitting Spell, Initial 1/3000. Plus 50 LP equals 45,000. Tier 3 Soul Splitting Spell, Transcendent, Max. With Transcendent Mastery, he easily split a part of his soul without harming his foundation, and through meditation, it would naturally heal. Placing a part of his soul into the AI runic program, it started to run and calibrate. The ether core started running and began emitting a cracking noise. Warning! Warning! Natural power supply is not enough. Switching to the backup power supply. The natural mana supplied by the Kingdom's array was not enough to run the calibration of the AI runic program, causing it to consume the top magic crystal that was within it. Looking at the top magic crystal becoming smaller and smaller, instead of panicking and feeling sad about the loss of money, he was instead excited. This proved that the AI runic program he had created was revolutionary. He bought another top magic crystal in case one was not enough, costing another 1 billion GP. After a few minutes, the AI runic program finished calibrating. Initialization complete. With a part of his soul within the runic program, he could easily control it as if he were controlling his own body. He then controlled the program to merge with the other core, causing the whole thing to crack again and consume a magic crystal. After it was done, he could now control and view the entire array set in the kingdom using a part of his soul, which was much more extensive than before. Now let's test the efficiency of inscribing runes, Maximus murmured to himself. First, he bought the runic program model for a virtual Colosseum. After all, the AI runic program could not truly think on its own. The little soul within it was only its driving force to inscribe runes and for Maximus to have better control over it. After he inputted the program into his consciousness, he passed his soul into the runic program. Inscribing. Estimated time: 198 hours. Excellent, Maximus nearly clapped his hands in satisfaction with his successful work. But as he looked at the dwindling top magic crystal, he grew worried again. At this rate, the inscribing process will consume at least one top magic crystal a day. Maximus sighed. After all, not everything is perfect. In the Ethereum realm, top magic crystals were super rare resources, even powerhouses were reluctant to use them. Yet he had the audacity to use them because he was lazy and didn't have the time to inscribe rune programs like a normal person. However, for him, as long as it could be solved with money, it wasn't really a problem. Now he just needed to wait for a little over a week for the virtual Colosseum to be completed. As for the Moonlight Mall he had planned previously, he scrapped it for now. With only him selling there, it defeated his purpose of circulating money. He would wait until most of his people learned various professions like mechanics and alchemy. For now, he would let the Etheria Pavilion handle all the selling. 3 days later, just before the virtual Colosseum was completed, his wife Irene went into labor. +1 child, potential rank 5 mythic. The potential of this newborn child lived up to his expectations. With the origin essence, the child reached mythic potential.
How are you, Irene?
Maximus asked lovingly. I'm fine.
How should we name this little angel?
Irene asked as she looked at the little girl in her embrace.
Let's name her Syra,
meaning the authority of the moon. Maximus thought of a name and said. Little Syra, say hi to your father, Irene said softly to the child. Little Syra looked curiously at the big man standing in front, blocking her view of the huge, bright thingy in the sky. Although baby Syra was just born, she already had her own thoughts. It was a gift from the world to those born with mythic and above mana compatibility.
How are you, little Syra?
Maximus looked at the little one as he gently pinched her cheeks. Little Syra looked at the big man trying to swat his hands away.
Oh? You don't want daddy?
Maximus noticed that little Syra seemed a bit annoyed based on her eye expression. This somehow shocked him. Although he could understand children being advanced for their age, he was still somewhat shocked that a newborn baby could express her emotions. Ho moonwasa. Seeing that the big man was still in her view, little Syra grunted, hoping to remind him to stay away. All right, I will visit you later, Maximus said, seeing that the little one was still annoyed. He gave them both a kiss and allowed them to rest. Once the big man was gone, little Syra turned her gaze towards the beautiful object shining in the sky, the moon.